And we are live. Hi, Albertha. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Ça
We
va
are live.
bien?
Ça va très très bien. We are live now on, let me verify, but we're supposed to be live on LinkedIn. Let me see what it says, what is showing here. Yes, we are. That is perfect. I can close this and let's see. Same thing on YouTube. So the live is going. Super happy, Albertha. We've been talking for a long, long time, and I'm super happy to have you here with me today on Papa PhD. Welcome.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
So, Albertha, for people who don't know you, and for people who don't know what's happening, this is a live recording of the Papa PhD podcast. So, Albertha, before we start the actual podcast, do you want to share where you are hailing from, where you are at the moment?
Hi, everyone. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm presently in North Trinidad,
Mm-hmm.
and Trinidad and Tobago is one of the twin islands in the Caribbean.
Mm, I kind of wish I was there now. um, So yeah, Albertha, the way this is going to happen, I have verified things are going well on LinkedIn and YouTube. If people are on Facebook or Twitter, I am going to close the feed on those two platforms and ask you come meet us either on LinkedIn on my profile or on the channel, the Papa PhD podcast channel on YouTube, and then this way I can easily see your comments and we can easily respond here on the platform that we're using. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to start with Facebook. Again, meet us on LinkedIn or YouTube like this. And same thing for Twitter. Meet us on the YouTube channel and subscribe by the way. There we go. So Albertha, everything's going fine, and I will start the podcast now. Welcome to this new episode of Papa PhD. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me Dr. Albertha Joseph-Alexander. Albertha has a PhD in plant science from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus in Trinidad and Tobago. She has a natural ability to tell stories, and as a result, her enthusiasm for science communication allows her to simultaneously enjoy science and storytelling while disseminating knowledge for the benefit of society. Presently, she is producing her first documentary. Welcome to Papa PhD, Albertha.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I'm super, super happy to have you here. Like I said before starting the recording, we've been in contact for a little while on LinkedIn, and yeah, I'm super glad that you were able to find a moment to come come here on Papa PhD on this Friday afternoon for me, and to share a little bit about this science communication adventure of yours in in a way. And I'm really really curious about this film that you are preparing, that you're working on. But before we go through all of that, maybe just can I ask you to talk just a little bit more about yourself? Like apart from what I described, which was really quick and summarized, what is one thing you would share for people watching or listening to kind of tell them who is Albertha Joseph-Alexander?
Okay. Well, Albertha Joseph-Alexander is a Caribbean citizen,
Mm-hmm.
and besides loving cricket,
Mm.
which is synonymous with the West Indies cricket team, I actually enjoy tennis, not to play, but to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to follow it again about 2 or 3 years ago. So I found back my love from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to take in the last bit of Serena Williams as she
Mm-hmm.
makes her her evolution, as
Of course.
she calls it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good.
And
What
so
about science-wise? What's your story been?
I remember being a child and actually being outside watching a tree, a
Hmm.
pigeon peas tree, which is a legume grown in my country. And I said to myself, I wonder if we could make these seeds all pretty colored. Uh, Pretty Betty, they would call it, because usually it's green.
Hmm.
But I never knew that actually was something that people did as a like a career or delved really deeply into. So in reflecting, I have been able to actually be in research, which is what that childhood thought was about, and
Hmm.
to actually work on the same plant,
Oh
pigeon
wow!
peas, and to try to improve it, not necessarily the seed color, but
Of
other
course.
things. So that journey is like a journey in plant science and crop improvement, which was
Hmm.
sparked from a child, even when I didn't even know that was something people did.
That is so cool. So out of your childhood curiosity, it ended up being actually what you worked on. And can you let us know a little bit more about your actually your PhD experience and how it kind of connected with this aspect of science communication?
Right. One of the interesting things is my PhD segued or came from a situation where researchers previous to my time had developed new varieties of the popular pigeon pea variety that we love to eat and grow. And
Mm.
in bringing out or releasing these new varieties, they found it wasn't, it actually didn't take hold or wasn't accepted. So then my research came in to see how we might be able to solve that problem and make the varieties more acceptable. So even though we won the game in the sense of making the pigeon peas more available year round, because people love to eat it. That is the fresh type, more year round. We
Hmm.
lost the battle in terms of they actually like it how it looks and
Hmm.
like it how it tastes. And so I came in to see if we could combine all the good features in one plant.
Hmm. Okay,
Mhm.
so really, really trying. So it's really what's the domain? So because I'm thinking agronomy, but this is not really agronomy. This is really like try is improvement, like variety improvement. But
Yeah.
I don't know
Mhm.
exactly what
So
scientific domain we're talking about.
it would be like plant breeding, crop
Plant breeding,
improvement,
crop improvement. Okay.
and just to follow, complete what you were asking in terms of the science communication, you could see the communication element coming out there, in the sense that we want to improve a crop for the consumer, but maybe it required us to be in communication with them a little bit more and not to assume things.
Hmm.
So we assume that they would like the variety, but then they didn't like it as much as we thought, or we weren't as aware of what they were not prepared to accept in terms of taste or seed size. So this that science communication element of research really comes in there, always liaising with your target market, not just at the end, or your target audience, not just at the end, but during or even before, because you might assume you're doing something that is good, but not see the whole picture.
And the public might not be ready for what you're, or not might not, yeah, might not want what you're preparing. I see. So I kind of see the link, but I imagine part of this because today we're talking about using SciComm to make a difference, and not everyone has kind of this penchant of going towards science communication. I imagine some of it had to do with your either your gifts or your a passion of yours for community. Can you talk a little bit about that, about why you went into more deeply into this aspect of communication, which not all researchers are really inclined to do.
Okay, not a problem. Actually, one of the other things I found I enjoy doing as I grew up from teenager into a young adult was being able to tell stories, so that if there, let's say if it's a Bible story, I would try to tell it or share it, but in a modern day context.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say if it's like an issue, say if it's flooding, etc., or an event, I would try to then share the information related to it in a story format, so that it would be more engaging. But I
Mm-hmm.
never actually taught, even though I went to school and studied science, I never thought about linking the two S's, storytelling
Mm-hmm.
and science. So that when I encountered this field of science communication, it was like this key unlocking a door where I could take the storytelling that I've always been doing, but not in the science field, and link it with science to now merge into science communication and share research results now in a more
Mm-hmm.
broader context. And what one of the foundation or visions behind that too was that being from the Caribbean, sometimes you would get information from abroad, results, data, but there's still a nuance to the Caribbean context or even the Trinidad and Tobago, which you may say Trinbago context. And therefore, it may very well be that the results are available, but it just locked up maybe in a library
Mm-hmm.
or it behind a journal, behind a paywall.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
this research and this information that is especially relevant to the Caribbean or Trinidad and Tobago in particular isn't getting out there. The
Mm-hmm.
international data might be more accessible. So
Of
therefore,
course.
I saw like linking the science and the storytelling and science communication and using that for sharing research would then be a wonderful avenue for making our information per se more accessible to the society. And
Mm-hmm.
once the society is able to hear data and research information in their context, then they have more more material at their fingertips to then make better decisions.
Of course.
And just to close off that part, not wanting to keep it too long, one of the things I also notice is that countries that were, you could say, doing very well in the competitive index were associated with having research and innovation and having these things robust and ruled out. So therefore I said, if my country, Trinidad and Tobago, and I like this, think of the Caribbean as well, as we are part of the Caribbean, if we are going to improve economically and socially and in every other aspect, then being able to really make use of research and innovation is one key way to do that. And how is we going to get that research and innovation? Well, they at least have to know about it. How they're
Of
going to know
course.
about it? It have to be communicated. And
Mm-hmm.
science communication is that key field to do it.
Of course, this makes a lot of sense, and I believe your Twitter account is your handle is Doctor Storytell, and I imagine some of this you've been sharing on on that platform. Is that it?
Yes, so I've been using the Twitter account more to start share information. Actually, the when I had signed up to do the professional master in communication of science and innovation, I had a different Twitter account name,
Mm-hmm.
and my coordinator said, "Well, you should have a name that don't have a set of numbers behind it." And I was like, "What could I call myself?" And then it came, well, Doctor and Storytell.
Mm-hmm.
So that with the Doctor Storytell, looking to continue to be more robust in sharing different information about what's happening in research.
Hmm. I really love it, and it's interesting. So, just a personal note here, a biographical note. My mom comes from Cape Verde. I don't know if you know where Cape Verde is. Small
Yes.
archipelago of islands just off Dakar, just off Senegal, an ex-Portuguese colony. And my mom used to tell me. So my great grandmother was actually illiterate, and my mom used to read to her when when staying with her, but also my mom talked about this very important culture and tradition of oral storytelling. And people, so these women that were going probably selling things, but from town to town, and that would tell a story and then stop, and then you'd hear the rest of the story when they would come back back to the village or to the city, whatever. And I think what you told about messages needing to be first accessible, but also packaged in a way that local communities are able to absorb them and make use of them, is super important. And I really find it very important that young researchers such as yourself take that into their hands of, I'm going to do this work of, I want to say translation, but also like popularization of the science. Because yes, I agree with you 100% that grasping and being able to make use of research data and scientific knowledge is going to be key going forwards to deal with the plethora of challenges that societies are dealing with. And we can be talking climate change, but also it could have to do with disease, like now with COVID. I'm sure a lot of science communicators have had to work a lot to pass across these messages that have been coming from, I don't know, the US, from Europe, and to pass it on to the different communities in a way that they can identify with them and that they can act upon them. So bravo for taking on this mission, Alberta.
Thank you.
And we've talked like in this general way of bringing scientific knowledge closer to communities. Uh, we've seen how your scientific path kind of crossed with that, and you have even talked now of doing a master's in communication, if I understood well. Um, but I'd really like to know now, apart from these large strokes of how things transpired and how you do what you do today, of maybe projects that are ongoing. Actually, during your short presentation, I kind of let people understand that you were working on a film. Can you talk a little bit about that? It's very
Yes.
exciting.
And so, how did that all start? One of the interesting things again was that the research on pigeon peas, and the film is about pigeon peas. So, as I was saying, one of the interesting things is that there has been decades of research happening in pigeon peas at the one of the universities where I studied. That is the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine Campus. And I thought it was commendable that research has been going on for all these decades, going into, well, 80 plus years,
Hmm.
starting from 1933. And the thing about it is we love peace, research is happening, but maybe people need to know more. And I was sharing it with my supervisor, Professor Patmanathan Umaharan, and I initially thought of a book, like maybe compiling a book with all the different research that was done. So it would be in this one place, this encyclopedia of research
Hmm.
from Trinidad and Tobago. And then somewhere along the line, it the idea of a film came about because looking at videos and looking at movies is like this common thread
Hmm.
for anybody from any walk of life, any aspect of life. And because I had familiarity with video from one of my companies I founded, and then I had been visiting the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival. I said, look,
Okay.
let me try that route. So I went to one of the festivals and met a Tr- Trinidadian who was into that area
Okay.
of film coaching, but is based abroad. Her name is Joanne Butcher. So she's a business coach specifically for persons who want to produce film. And
Hmm.
I connected with her and started my journey to developing a script for the Pigeon Pia outline.
Hmm.
And so that would have been around 2019. May
Okay.
I would have connected with her
Before
to
COVID.
I like how you say that. That's all part of the story.
Of
A-
course.
And so that's mid year 2019. I did the coaching with her, and the end of 2019 December I started my first shoot
Ay, ay,
bravely.
ay. I see where this is going.
And then I said I wanted to interview persons who grow the peas. And so I visited farmers. I was able to do one of the interviews with the farmers. That was March 2020.
Ay, ay, ay.
And then in March also, I went to visit one of the scientists to do a location shoot. So I had that week set aside to let's see if we knock out the interviews with scientists, knock out interviews with pigeon pea, those who love to eat pigeon peas. And I remember leaving from that particular scientist, and I went to the pigeon peas field to just check on some things. And it was that afternoon COVID arrived in Trinidad and Tobago.
Ay, ay,
And
ay.
so by the end of that week, mid March 2020, well, they started to shut down things, because out of abundance of caution.
Of course. Of course.
And I only picked back up with doing interviews towards in December 2020. I restarted with some of the interviews, and I'm happy to report that June of 2022, I completed interviews. So I interviewed persons who love to eat peas,
Hmm.
persons who love to grow peas, and persons who have done research on pigeon peas. And now we're moving into the editing. So,
Editing, which is another adventure.
so the interesting thing is that even though we love to eat pigeon peas in Trinidad and Tobago, and it's one of the key ingredients in one of the national dishes called pilau.
Hmm.
Pigeon peas isn't available. That is the fresh one, which they love to eat the most. Fresh green pigeon peas isn't available throughout the year, that type of
Hmm.
variety. And imagine loving to eat something so much and you have to wait either for January, February, so we in 2022, so persons would have had fresh pigeon peas that the farmers would have picked and selling, or they might have grown in the backyard. They only could get it January, February, and maybe early March. And then they have to wait till late November, December. And so scientists, as I said, decided, okay, we'll do our part to improve the varieties, but they encountered some interesting challenges, and that is explored in the documentary.
Okay, okay, okay. So you're now well into the editing, I imagine,
uh, Getting the things organized to start the editing,
because it's a complex task, I know.
and yes, and also well, as the film coach would say, you not only want to have the creative side of filming, but you want to have the business side. So, in
Hmm.
terms of picking up my pace with raising the funds towards the film, because we set a budget at around 50,000 US for the
Hmm.
full rollout of the documentary.
Okay.
And
So
it has been an interesting experience, as you could see, a plant scientist fully
yeah,
moving into the film world.
yeah. No, it's super super interesting, and it makes because I know I've met a bunch of scientists who are interested in different aspects of science communication, but often it will be building either a Twitter or an Instagram account, or having a blog or a YouTube channel, and actually, producing a documentary is another level of complexity and of organization. And I'd be really curious. So, because you mentioned, can you just give me a timeline of your PhD, and you mentioned the master's in communication. Uh, what was the timeline of that, and how did that lead in terms of time to this film project?
So I would have completed the PhD in plant science, graduated in October 2018, and did some, like, say, unofficial, if you want to call it, postdoc work, just following up
Okay.
for myself some aspects of the project that I did,
Hmm.
in terms of, well, if I have these new varieties, then the proof of whether it's worth it is the tasting. So
Hmm.
I did a preliminary project just to get a feel of how people felt about the taste of the peas. And then in 2019, after connecting with Joe and Butcher initially at the end of 2018, I officially started the it's starting to work in pre-production of the film. And so the new timeline would be to have editing finished by 2023, and let's say initial release at a film festival towards the end of 2023, God willing. And
Hmm.
so then there's still that gap as to where this professional master came about. Uh,
Yes.
so, so one of the things was, because you could say science communication in terms of a field of learning, developing in early stages of development locally, it meant that I would have needed to study abroad if I wanted to develop further my skills in it. And I was kind of like, I wonder if I want to like go abroad after finishing this PhD, and family and my husband. And then, well, during the pandemic, everything went online,
Hmm.
including this program in University of Trento. So during the pandemic, not able to film, let's say,
Hmm.
on site, but during that lockdown time, I was able to do the science communication postgraduate studies
Hmm.
from, let's say, September 2020 to June 2021. So that's the gap in which it fell.
Hmm.
And and in fact, the interesting thing is that I was also able to do a myriad of other short courses,
Okay.
webinars related to science communication. And because of not having, the all the resources available locally, it meant that I was even in uh, a webinar hosted. I was in two webinars hosted by science communicators organizations in Canada. So
Okay. Oh, that's so
I
interesting.
and that's how I heard about Papa PhD.
Oh my. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Right.
There we go.
So I,
That's where the
mhm.
link is.
So I think one of the benefits of having to search for resources and opportunities to become better at the craft, because it is a craft, it's a
Hmm.
field of, a legitimate field of study, was that I got to experience meeting like, like I don't know, it's like real science communicators in Canada, New Zealand, India, Germany, USA, of course,
Hmm. Very cool.
including you.
Now, well, thank you. I try, but now a question. So you've done all this training. You said you did even some courses, some piecemeal courses here and there, and so you kind of took advantage that you had the time because COVID was around to do that. And I really, because sometimes people may ask and have asked, do I, what's a key thing, a key skill to learn if I want to become a science communicator or even a full-time science communicator? In these courses that you've taken, what would you say is a key skill or maybe a key subject that you covered that you really feel enriched your profile as a science communicator and that complemented what you brought from before?
Right. I would say that well, like as a person who did a doctorate, you would have to be like a strategic problem solver,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll have, in a sense, to be detail oriented, and you'll have to show him. And one of the things I brought was that empathetic persona or demeanor. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, now one of bringing that into the science communication, what I learned is that you have to really take the time to know your audience and to define your audience, and not to assume that you know. And and so that's one important thing. So I learned a lot about breaking down who your audience is, not only in terms of just the basic demographics, but psychographics of the thing, how they feel, and also not only the first line audience, but also the, which is, let's say, your primary target audience, but you also learned about your secondary target audience. In other words, uh, you might want to reach a mother who has about, in terms of issues around the health of their child, let's say vaccination, but a
Mm-hmm.
key secondary audience for her might be her mother or her
Mm-hmm.
mother-in-law. So therefore, you have to take into consideration the target audience, the primary target, the secondary target, and then let's say that's one big area. And another area too is the what I would say, the media or the platforms which you would use to communicate. And that we learned about that in that in particular, like the different types of social media are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to communicate to your target audience, then you have to know where they are. So that is what will help choose the platform you would use. So you go in that order per se,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you know who you want to target. You go where they are. And you don't say,
Mm-hmm.
well, I like YouTube, so I'll go YouTube. If they're not there, well,
You're
at a place
missing
instead.
your audience completely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then related to that sort of order in which you would choose your platform is to design the information to suit the platform. So as you would realize, like with Instagram, is that heavy visual pictures, and now short videos, and in fact, Instagram doesn't really allow links in that
Mm-hmm.
sense directly. And then they have to take. So if you have some information, you have to now change it so it's very visual based graphics. If you're using Instagram, very video based. If you're using YouTube, and then I would say word based in a way
Yeah,
if you're using Twitter, only
of course.
because Twitter means you have to keep your word count uh, very restricted. And so
Yes,
you have to power pack your words.
of course, of course, of course.
And Facebook has a little more flexibility, but then remember, Facebook is like that lineman by a neighborhood block. So you don't want it to get too restricted or over formalized. So you have to put your words in a conversational way. And then if it's LinkedIn now and you're on that platform, you're allowed a little more professionalism, but
Yeah.
still you connectivity. So in short, uh, with that, I would have learned about choice of platforms and how to tailor your content to suit the platform for maximum effectiveness.
I 100% agree, and I do agree also that for all of those, it all starts with defining your audience for sure. It seems like you have supporters, Alberta. Do you see here?
That's
There's
my
a
husband,
there you go, Paul.
Paul
Thanks for the
Alexander.
message, and he's saying hi and supporting you during this maybe a little bit unnerving experience of recording a podcast. So hi, Paul. I believe he's also here. He's also there in Trinbago. So hi from Montreal. Alberta, I really want to ask you about specific, given that you're getting coaching in movie making and in your case documentary filming, I'd really maybe want to ask you, and it's funny because I just, while you were speaking, I discovered something interesting. I just mentioned my mom was from Cape Verde, and you were talking about these pigeon peas, and this made me think of something. And there's the same pea in Cape Verde. It's called there. They call it the Congo bean, and so I'm just offering you now on a platter, episode 2 of your documentary, the travels and history of the pigeon pea in the the from Africa to the Atlantic to the Caribbean. There you go. I'm offering it to you.
Okay, thanks very much. And
And I love it. By the way, I really, really like pigeon peas. Now that I know what they are, I really like them. They cook them in different ways. It can be a salad even. After you cook them, you can eat them cold. But I really, really like them. So now I'm even more curious to see your documentary.
yes, and the interesting thing about, well, the pigeon peas would have come across during the slave trade, and when it came across, it was first used to feed pigeons.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why one of the names we have for it is pigeon
Pigeon
peas.
pea. Interesting. Very cool. So this is just an apartheid because of this common thing. But now, like, so you talked about Paul is saying hi. I'm seeing his message here. Hi, Paul, and thank you. He's saying thank you for. He's writing in French. So your husband speaks French, I guess.
Yes,
He does.
he's a language
uh,
teacher.
oh, okay, there we go. So thank you, Paul, and hi. So where I was going is you talked about Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and again, thinking of the documentary you're doing, it's another level of complexity. And yes, you need to also think about the audience for sure. But there, you've already talked about interviewing different types of people who enjoy eating the pigeon peas, people who enjoy cultivating them, and also scientists who are trying to work on them to improve them. And this to me shows another level of complexity, needing to have some project management skills for sure, to deal with all of that, logistics, but then I imagine also some technical aspects of even recording audio, etc. So my question to you is, because these are so differentiated, I imagine getting someone like the person you mentioned who's your coach, or getting a course in filmmaking is something that is necessary to embark on such a project.
Right. And so after having hired the film coach to help with the pre-production stage, of course comes the production stage.
Of course.
And one of the things she would say is, uh, fund the film and hire the persons who are experts in those areas.
Okay.
So I would have hired a crew with a videographer experience in that area and sound recorders. Because one of the things, interestingly, they say is that if uh, a person will faster leave looking at a movie if they cannot hear well. Um, the and so I try to make sure that I didn't guess when it comes to the sound recording, and so I hired a separate sound recordist for that aspect, Mr. Cedric Smart and Mr. Keon Reed to deal with the videography, and then
Okay.
I'll, as such, also hire someone to deal with the editing aspects. Though, of course, I actually, as part of my postgraduate program in the professional master, I decided I would do a 5-minute video. And so I interviewed someone and
Okay.
I did my own editing and added my own music. And so that helped. So I had my own like little small type of experience with it. And I think that would help for you to understand when you have to deal with the professionals who are experts in those particular areas. So then to answer your question, yes, I would have hired experts in the particular areas of sound and video and now editing. And and so you'll have to, as I say, project manage around my, my time, their time,
Of
because
course.
obviously they won't be working on one project. And then, of course, you also have to coordinate with the availability of the interviewee. And one of the other things I did was that I did, you could say, some reviewing or preliminary judging for Jackson Wild Media Awards. That's
Okay.
one of the awards around wildlife filmmaking, and I felt doing that as well would have, given you that sharper eye with, as being on the audience side of things, what resonates, what people like, what sticks out, pacing and all those type of things. And I also took advantage of opportunities for, like, I think it was a 6-week free training in editing that was
Wow.
offered by
Okay.
the Jackson Wild community. So because I say all those things help you to understand better what you want and what persons would be saying as you liaise with them.
Very good. So then, if now I understand, and you're doing the right thing. You're hiring the right professionals to do the work. But there's one thing that you then need to really work well at, and you mentioned it, which is getting the funding. And I think anyone wanting to start a professional, let's say, science communication project needs to figure out funding. Can you talk a little bit? And this is the end. We're getting to the end of the interview, but can you talk a little bit about where you are, the experience so far getting funding for your documentary, and what key lessons you've learned so far?
Okay. The key, well, the process of doing funding is an ongoing one.
Of course.
And one of the things I learned is to, let's say, be able to sell yourself and explain and to to help people to buy into something that you don't just want to be your own, but to
Mm-hmm.
be their own. And so for me, it's just, continuing to build that confidence, like I would have done first rounds to, let's say, get me through some early stages of the production. And now I have to like kickstart, if you want to say, the crowdfunding so that it would complete outstanding expenses, let's say from pre-production, and really have me questioned properly as I move into the editing stage. And one of the things about editing is not just it's not just the footage itself to organize, but then you want to bring in the music element.
Yes.
And I could say that what one of the things I want to do for the documentary is to to let people get the Caribbean music, the feel of
Mm-hmm.
the Caribbean music. I want to have that in the film and Caribbean culture, so that especially for the diaspora persons who not in Trinidad and Tobago but are abroad, and they love their peas when they watch the film, it will just, it will be like a whole love affair with
Of
food.
course. They'll feel like they're home.
Yes. And so one of the key things now is to get the crowdfunding page and also going fully and properly, and to also speed up the to do some more grant writing,
Mm-hmm.
because there would be grants out there, let's say in the maybe women filmmakers, filmmakers of color, uh, filmmakers looking at issues related to the sustainable development goals. And so I want to do some more focus efforts in
Of
that
course.
area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Of course, great. Alberta, we've reached the end of the interview, and it's funny that
Oh
yes, it's the time flies when you're recording, and I think you probably know this also. But I'd really love to, as kind of a last question. And you've mentioned a few things already. You've mentioned the question of thinking about your audience, choosing, knowing where this audience goes for information, and choosing your platform accordingly. But I'm just imagining, someone who has an idea, something, a subject they really like, but they feel like, oh, making a movie or a documentary or a podcast is, it's not for me. I no one around me does it, and they don't feel, they have maybe this imposter syndrome preventing them from giving that first step of, I don't know, lending borrowing a microphone to start recording, or a camera. Do you have a last word of encouragement for someone like that who's in this position of, I'd love to do that, but I don't think it's for me.
no. I would say start small. Uh, if like find the smallest, easiest thing you could do,
Mm-hmm.
and if it's just like chatting with your friend or a colleague, just sitting down with them and asking them questions and hearing what they say, and then you sharing, and then they're sharing it. That is like an informal type of interviewing. So
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
start there and you develop, and then you go from there. Because what I realize is everything have to start somewhere. And so what you seeing in front of you in terms of this big podcast
Mm.
and this big documentary or this big filmmaking, it really just pull back and say, like, why do I want to do this, and what about it I like? If it is that I like finding out information, just simulate that in a easier setting. Uh, if it's like you, in my case, my vision is to seek the welfare of the city or my country, which is actually is based on a Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:7. So I have this passion that I want to make my country well, and I want to make it good, and this is my way of doing it. So maybe focus on the easiest thing that you could do next, and focus on what drives you. And when it gets difficult, that will be like your fire to push you and keep you going. And then you have a good example of Papa PhD.
Yeah, well, I think you really hit the nail on the head. Don't compare yourself to things that are already rolling, because they have this inertia, and but things start small. They do, and the first episode of Papa PhD is not the same as this current episode that we're recording. It didn't go the same way. I didn't go about it the same way, and it wasn't as natural. It didn't sound as I didn't sound as natural, etc. But yeah, allow yourself to maybe fall flat a couple of times or feel ridiculous, but give yourself a chance. I agree with you 100%. So just try, and then see
Yes,
what happens from there.
yes, because uh, look like I'm on like the first podcast sharing about science communication, and it it happened. And as you said, we took a while to connect, but it happened.
Yeah,
And so sometimes, yeah, time is there, but let time be an opportunity, not a fear factor.
very, very, very good point. I agree. Not an oppressor, just an opportunity. Albertha, this has been a great conversation. I'm really eager to hear more about your project, and do let me know when you have this crowdfunding link. I will put it in the show notes of your episode. I understand that it's not ready yet, but whenever it is, just do write it to me, and I'll add it in there, because this way anyone listening who's interested in your project can chip in and help you get to this next level in your documentary. I really, really enjoyed the fact that we've even had more commonalities there than first expected. We can talk about that another time. But yeah, I really admire your impetus to go create, and the fact that you took that chance, or that opportunity, which was kind of this moment of COVID where things couldn't happen on the terrain, and you said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna get some training, I'm gonna do some networking, and now here you are at this level of preparing this documentary. It's super, super inspiring, and I'm sure listeners will have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. So thank you for having me here today.
Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
So, Alberta, this ends the recording part of this live. So the this what happened, or what we talked about in the last 50-ish minutes, is going to be part of the audio podcast, and now this is kind of just a behind the scenes. So I just want to thank you again for reaching out, and for even though you waited, and you waited on the right time. I'm super happy that you ended up writing me and saying, "Hey, David, let's do it. Let's meet in like in the end of August." And I'm super happy to have shared your story. And yeah, I really wish the best to your projects, and do keep me up to date, because I'd love to know what happens with it.
Yes, not a problem. What I should say is actually my sister-in-law. She works in France.
Okay.
She's a translator,
Okay.
and
Like me.
so and so And well, my husband is also in languages, mainly Spanish, and well, his brother-in-law is like a French citizen,
Okay.
and so there's a lot of French around.
That's why you were sending me messages in like some thank yous, etc. in French. I see. So there's a connection there.
Yeah. And his computer is set to French.
Okay. Oh my, that's a complicated keyboard layout to have. That's good on him to to be able to do that. All right. Yeah.
And so,
Go
lastly,
ahead.
before I go, I want to wish you all the best with your other pursuits, and also with Papa PhD, and taking the initiative to help persons who have their doctorate but not necessarily want to stay in the strict academic walls,
Hmm.
to feel comfortable to step out. And I'm looking forward to going through the archives
Yes.
and gaining some resources. And may you continue to prosper in what you
Thank you.
do.
Thank you, Alberta. This is really, really appreciated, and kind of like your case. This is kind of a passion thing, and but it's always good to hear some words of appreciation. So thank you for that. All right.
You're
So
welcome, Dr. Da Silva.
my pleasure. So now what I'll do is I'll cut the live. We can stick around and still talk, but I'm gonna say goodbye to anyone who's been watching, and of course this includes Paul, but there's other people I see there. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't subscribe yet, go on the Papa PhD YouTube channel and subscribe. I just crossed 200 subscribers, but I kind of wish I could quickly get to 500 because there's new functionalities there for me. But also, if you're not so much YouTube and you're more of a podcast person, just yeah, go and subscribe to the Papa PhD podcast. You'll see it's bilingual. Sometimes it usually it's a week in French, a week in English because I'm in Montreal. But there's a lot of episodes in there. If you speak either one of the languages, you'll find a lot. Like Alberta was saying, there's a lot in the archive for you to listen. So yeah, do subscribe. It always helps us independent producers. And that's it. Thanks, Alberta, and I'll let's keep in touch.